Hello everyone, this is Shadi Reis from SIF 2022. With me is Dr. Iyengar. He is a Director of Structural Heart and Boulder in Colorado. Srini, always pleasure to see you in the conferences.
Yeah, Chaddy, great to see you as well.
I know you are young, but you have a lot of experience, and I know there's a lot of fellows watching us now, especially structural fellows. So we spoke offline about the challenges of how to get into the job and how to launch yourself after graduation. Let's touch on that.
Right, and first and foremost, thank you for saying young, but certainly, I guess the gray hairs are being missed right here. But
I have no hair.
But I will say, one of the biggest questions I get from fellows graduating their programs right now, and not just interventional, but the fellows that are doing structural heart fellowships. Now, let's be honest, Chaddy, when I finished fellowship, 15 years ago, there wasn't such a thing as structural heart fellowships.
Exactly.
So that's developed over the last, say, 10 to 12 years.
Right.
So every year there are fellows coming out with this quote unquote structural heart training, which is great. However, they have to then enter the field, the job market for these types of jobs. And of course, any fellow that was just trained in structural heart wants to do structural heart procedures.
Yeah. Wake up in the morning, deploy valve, clips.
Exactly. Yeah. And the problem, as we both realize, is that, again, when you come from an academic center or a center that trains structural heart fellows, they have a lot of volume. But that doesn't mean the position that they go to after fellowship will have
the same thing.
Exactly the numbers.
Yeah.
So I often tell fellows, first and foremost, when you are looking to graduate or when you're looking for positions, you have to understand the job marketplace as well as what hospital, community, or city you want to live in.
Right.
Every fellow seems to want to practice in the top centers, in the top cities, for the top salaries. And the reality is, those centers already have their structural interventionalists. So it's important to be realistic and mindful of where you're going.
Yes.
So when you are looking at a structural heart program or a program for a physician or a job after fellowship, you need to ask yourself some key components. What makes you happy? What will make you happy? Will it be saying I will be in the lab every day doing procedures? Will it be a certain salary that you need to have? Yeah. Will it be a lifestyle of where the city, where your spouse or your family needs to live? Because oftentimes all three components won't line up.
Absolutely.
So I really believe that everybody looking at positions coming out of their structural heart fellowship has to be understanding of the playing field.
And realistic of the real world, yeah?
That's correct. And I think that's additionally, a lot of fellows will train in a certain center that have a culture in that center. And they'll learn that culture because, again, you learn from your mentors and your attendings, as we all did.
Yes.
But taking that mentality and then taking it to a different community or a different city doesn't necessarily work either.
Yeah.
So before you change any culture of a program, you have to first be a part of that culture. And what that means is that if you're going to a small hospital in a small town, in a small state for that matter, you have to be a part of that community. Once you're in that community and then you feel like you've actually earned the trust and you've earned the respect of your colleagues and your cath lab staff and your OR staff and your administration, then I think you can start changing the culture of that mindset. But again, I think a lot of fellows come out thinking because of their resume, because of the ivory tower mentality is what we call it, that these other centers will change their ways because of that. And I think, the reality is that doesn't usually happen.
And the expectation is high. When you go to these centers, the expectation from administration, leadership, they want you to do something for the program or for the city or the community.
Exactly.
So if you understand the dynamics, it's a setup for failure.
Exactly. And the big issue is the expectations are high oftentimes, especially in a competitive area. Reality is that you have to be understanding that if you're going to a program that's saying, hey, we want you out there, we want you to build our program, that doesn't mean sitting back in your office and waiting for referrals to come in. I think that one of the biggest issues that young fellows have is they don't understand going out and actually shaking hands with primary care physicians around the town.
Yes.
Showing them that even though you're a super specialist, you can talk to any physician at any scope and actually offer your help. And cell phone number, your ability to take their calls anytime during the day, Friday 4:30, the notorious Friday afternoon calls. But you have to be willing to take those calls and those transfers and those accepting those patients to build your program. And I think that's the only way fellows coming out can be successful. It's very hard for a fellow to come out of a program and say, I want a built-in referral for my structural heart. It's rare that happens because usually there's already a senior interventionalist that's there.
Who's doing it.
Right.
So unless you, so what you're telling me then to the fellows as well is when you graduate, you have two pathways. Either you go to be a part of the ongoing program that's been established before, or you're gonna go and build up your own.
Right, and I'll tell you something, both paths, and I'm not gonna say right or wrong, both have issues. If you to join the former, if you would go to a program that already has a senior interventionalist or senior structuralist, you will have hopefully mentorship, number one, that's the key.
Yeah.
Number two, you'll also have volume hopefully built in. The downsides with that, number one, you may not be the top dog. You may have someone in front of you or multiple people in front of you. The second problem is those referrals might not come to you, but rather your partners.
Yes.
And you have to carve out somehow your own type of referral network, which may be difficult when you're competing with your own partner.
That sometimes creates frustration.
It does. The second pathway, however, is really good for some people because they would say, hey, I'd love to go start my own thing. I have the willingness and the drive. What's the difficulty there? You might be competing against other groups who do not want you around. And you might have administrative issues that say, hey, you know what, the expectation was a lot higher and you're not delivering. So there's a lot more pressure. You're running your own program, but there's a ton of pressure coming externally.
Yeah.
I often see most common scenarios, what I see is fellows coming out, joining an established program, cutting their teeth, and then trying to move on their own, which again, often requires leaving that community.
Absolutely.
So I think there's not a right or wrong answer. It's about your tolerance, about are you willing to basically be in second command, third command in a program and learn, and that's great if you want to stay there as well, or do you want to take the chance of developing your own program?
And sometimes take some time. For the second option, it's going to take some time.
Absolutely.
Be patient.
It cannot be overnight, and it will not be overnight. And I often tell people who do the second option of starting their own program, the risks are there too. Mm-hmm. Complication risks, obviously, having other people watching your program develop. So, but the rewards are amazing as well, because then you are the director of your de facto program.
Yeah.
And Chad, I like to believe that I have some credibility here. I've started 3 separate TAVR programs in 3 different hospital systems in 2 different states over the last 10 years. So literally from the struts up, I've started these TAVR programs, including Watchman, MitraClip, PFO closure. So I have experience knowing that being the person on the firing line of each time I've done it. And it is telling you, each time I've done it, I've learned something from the past experience.
So you're getting it from the horse mouth. This is definitely what you need to look for as a fellow, having this expectation. And when you have this expectation, no frustration, and then you can success.
Right.
Otherwise, if you go with different expectation, what we discussed earlier.
Exactly, because again, if you're coming from the quote-unquote ivory tower, having the expectation that what you had in your major medical center isn't in reality. And I think that you have to pull your sleeves up, you have to get out there and work your butt off. For the first 5 years out of fellowship, I think you honestly have to earn the respect of your colleagues, of your referrals, of the administration to really build that program successfully. So it's never going to be a situation where you go from Ivory Tower A to Ivory Tower B. More of the tense, you will be coming out and working pretty hard to get that reputation.
One last comment is always make your number one is your family.
Without a
All
doubt.
of us has priorities, young families, spouse, family, significant other. Make sure they are a priority.
You know, Chad, I can be honest with our private conversation as well. I will tell you, someone's always going to do more valves, someone's always going to do more procedures, someone's always going to write more papers, but you are the only one that's going to have your family.
Yes.
So make sure you are the number one priority and they're the priority for you.
Well said, well said. Srini, well, thank you so much for the advice. Phenomenal advice. Use these tips for your practice fellows as well as early career, and please watch this video and other on SIF YouTube channel. This is Shad Reyes from SIF 2022.